We pay most of our expense in life is on tax, and there's a lifetime of tax almost from when we're born. Income tax, VAT. So you earn money, and then they tax it at source for most employees. So you get your net amount, and when you go to spend it on something in the shops, you're then paying 20% VAT on that money, or you're paying other sorts of taxes, and then even the shop then pays income tax on your expenditure. They pay a profit tax, maybe a corporation tax, or they pay a profit on their turnover for the money that you've spent. They also pay council tax. You pay council tax to live in your house. Car tax, your road tax, your road fund license, tax on your fuel, tax on what you drink, duty, and this sort of thing. Smoker, if you're paying massive tax. Even insurance is taxed now. If you take out an insurance policy, you're taxed. Pensions, Gordon Brown started taxing pension funds. Traveling, if you ever book a ticket and you have to cancel it, ask the company to pay back the tax on that ticket. You'll find that the tax is a massive percentage of the overall ticket price. Now, most travel companies don't give it back, so people cancel, let's say, an Air Ryan flight, £100. They don't bother about the tax, but there's a massive amount of tax. And it was a very good travel agent that told me, he said, when I had to cancel a flight and didn't get the money back, he said, don't worry, I'll get you a couple of £100 back on the tax. So there's travel tax. Green energy taxes. We're going to be taxed to build more wind farms, and it's already built into your bills in the UK. Then there's stamp duty. When you buy a property out of your taxed income, you're then paying stamp duty to buy the property. And then if you buy a buy-to-let property and you borrow money to buy it, maybe you use leverage, or you put your savings in that you've paid tax on, and then you make a profit on that for all your hard work and effort, the tax man's there again. Can we have some capital gains tax because you made a gain? They call it unearned income. You made a gain on that, so we want to tax that. Some people on the left of the Labour and Liberal Party want to bring in wealth taxes as well. Then there's business taxes. If you employ people, you're paying tax for employing people, literally employers' national insurance, and all sorts of taxes that you're paying throughout your life. It just seems like a massive scam. And then the final kicker is, here we go, you die and then you leave something to your relative, and then they put their hand out again for inheritance tax. All that hard work you spent maybe building up to buy your property out of taxed income, you paid all the taxes along the way, and all that work you put into it, and then what happens? They say, okay, if you're passing that property from you to your children or grandchildren, we want the tax. Now, can you do anything to avoid these taxes? Well, of course you can. You're allowed legally to try and reduce your taxes as much as you can. Now, when you're employed, there's not much you can do about it because you're taxed at source, okay? But if you're running a business or you're self-employed, there's all sorts of things and legal reliefs you can get on maybe using your home as the business, claiming mileage for business mileage and travel and that sort of thing. Your mobile, all these sorts of things can be used if you're running a business, even if it's a business on the side. But you can also legally reduce your inheritance tax. Now, you can do this through wills and trusts and just general planning. It doesn't have to be complicated. But new research from Canada Life revealed that over half of the UK adults, 51% of them in fact, have not even written a will, nor are they currently in the process of writing a will, and 13% of people said they've no intentions of writing any will in the future. Now, some people say, I've got nothing to leave and I'm not worried about it. But, if you don't write a will, someone is going to write it for you after you die. And a lot of people, might want to, even if they haven't got much to leave, they might want to leave it to a certain person. They might not want it to get into the hands of, a relative that they don't like. They might want to specify how they could be buried, where they could be buried, what sort of funeral they want. So even if you haven't got much to leave, it still makes sense. Otherwise, it's a lot of aggravation for your dependents, for your children or your grandchildren. It's a lot of aggravation where there's no will. It's called dying intestate. It sounds painful, but it's painful for the people who are dealing with your will and getting probate and all that sort of thing. But you can do a lot to plan for this. You can do so much to plan for this, and this is what the wealthy do. The Duke of Westminster's and the landed gentry, they pass on massive billions amounts of wealth to generation using their wills and trusts. Okay, now you can take advantage of this even if you're not a billionaire. Try and follow what the rich do. Follow rich habits. The rich pay as little tax as they want to, as they can possibly pay. They use all the loopholes. They're not loopholes. They're legal ways of reducing taxes that have been written into laws, and they use the legal ways of mitigating things like inheritance tax as well. Also, Section 24. You can get around Section 24 by taking advice from a chartered tax advisor, not an accountant. Accountant is someone who just does your books and says, this is your tax bill. A chartered tax advisor is someone who will advise you on how you can reduce your taxes, how you can make the best of your situation so that you pay as little tax as possible. This is serious. Over your lifetime, you're going to pay hundreds of thousands, if not millions, in taxes. I paid millions in taxes through my businesses. And you're legally allowed. Now, if you think about, I just finally end on this, what the government does with your taxes. Think about this. Wars, sending bombs here and there, wasting money. And this current government has already announced that they're going to send 80 million to African countries and to third world countries to help them develop so that they won't come to the UK on boats. What a waste of money. In addition to that, we spend billions on foreign aid as well. That's in addition to that budget. So that's just one aspect of it. Here we'll give pay rises here, we'll do this, we'll do that, all with our money, and it's our money. The government haven't got any money. Then there's the local authorities, how much money they waste. Literally, if you look at your local authority and what they spend, all that they're supposed to do is collect your rubbish, deal with the roads, but they're not dealing with that. And did you know that most of these government departments and local authorities have a budget for the year? Okay, and if they don't spend that budget, they lose it. They lose part of it. So if their budget was $1 million and they only spent through prudent spending 900,000, they would lose 100,000 of their budget for the following year. So what do? They say, well, we better spend this money. So they go out and spend the money towards the end of the financial year so they don't lose their budget. What a ridiculous waste of money. One guy, so in some areas you have a county council, then you have a borough council, then you have these parish councils. And some parish councils get £500,000-600,000 a year from taxpayers to just spend. And they'll spend it on their parks, they'll spend it on hanging baskets, they park benches, painting park benches when they've got plenty of money, staff. They get something like £500,000 a year for a parish council. And basically, they could easily be, you could easily save all that money, just merge it into one big council, but they don't. That's another rant of mine. So I figure I'd rather have my money in my pocket to spend as I want to, and I'd rather hand on my money to my dependents with as little tax as possible, and I'd rather pay as little tax as possible on my savings, like by using ISAs and this sort of thing. Because even there, your savings are taxed. You save money into a pension, and when you draw that pension, guess what? They tax that as well. Your state pension is taxable. Okay. Now there are reliefs and certain amounts you don't pay on the first 12,500 and all these sorts of things, but generally it's one big government scam to tax us. And this is not unique to the UK, and yet these countries, they take all this tax and yet they're trillions in debt. 30-odd trillion, 33 trillion of debt in the national debt in the US. We've got something like 4 trillion here of government debts, deficits, all these, the figures are mind-boggling. The interest the government pay on these debts is mind-boggling as well. So I say it's not immoral to pay as little tax as possible. It's not immoral to pass on your wealth to your family intact rather than in tax, and it's not immoral to avoid Section 24 taxes. It's not immoral to try and mitigate your taxes as much as possible. So if you need advice on that, just drop me a line and I'll put you in touch with tax advisors who can help you. charles@charleskelly.net. So it's been so long, and sorry about my little rant on taxes, but it really does annoy me how much money is wasted by governments and local authorities on seemingly nonsense things. Employing, I won't even go into it, I'm not going to start on it, but pay as little tax as possible legally, and you can do it, and with the right advice you can do it. So good news for borrowers today, and this is the start of August. If you're watching this in a couple of weeks, 1st of August, interest rates have been cut by 0.25% to 5%. Not such good news for savers, but it's not going to make a lot of difference one way or the other. Thank you for listening. This is Charles Kelly, Money Tips.